Hi everyone, it's been a little while. Hope you're all doing really well. And so today I thought I'll take the opportunity to answer some questions that's been frequently asked on my videos on the channel. And they're mostly keto related, so hopefully that's gonna help you as well. And also give you some update on what's happening with me recently. So one of the things that's asked quite a lot regarding particular recipe videos is what are the macros and calories of these recipes. So I kind of talked about this in the previous videos. I don't count macros, I don't count calories, and also I don't measure my keto level. So what I do is I basically follow the key principles of ketogenic diet, which is high fat, low carb, moderate protein. So everybody does it a different way. Personally, I don't get a calculator out and start logging everything. It doesn't really work for me. So I kind of follow my intuition most of the time and gradually it becomes second nature. So in terms of food choices, I keep the carb as low as possible. And also I make sure that there's a healthy dose of fat with whatever I eat. And so far, it kind of works quite well. So you may ask, well then, how do you keep track and make sure you're not doing all wrong? So that's a very good question. And the way I keep track of my diet is to weigh myself every day. So I weigh myself every morning. I got an app that's linked up to my scale, so I do have a log, so I can kind of keep track of the fluctuation of my weight, and I use that in a way to monitor how I respond to the food I eat. It's a method that works for me. So I'm the kind of person that doesn't want to be overburdened with sort of numbers and having to keep track of journals, etc., or log everything I eat. I just know that's not going to work for me. All I do is I weigh myself every day and watching how the number changes based on what I eat the day before, or maybe a couple of days in the past couple of days. If my body responds well, then I keep doing what I'm doing. If not, I make adjustments. And that's how I kind of adjust my carb intake as well. And this is something I want to talk a little bit more about because particularly if you're new on keto, the tendency is to be ultra nervous about these numbers, but our body is not really that cut and dry. Well, you and I can eat exactly the same food, have the same carb counts, but our bodies might respond a totally different way. And this is a really important point. So I think one of the things being on keto for me is to learn about my body and how my body responds to certain food and what works for me and what doesn't. And it's not strictly correlating to a number of carbs, funny enough, and also a fat intake necessarily. So recently I've been eating a lot of fava beans, those roasted fava beans. Let me show you. So this is what I'm talking about. These are broad beans, fava beans, roasted with some salt. And so I've been really addicted to this. And I get this from Whole Foods. They sell those, some branches. If you check the carb counts, it's actually not particularly ketogenic. I can't remember the number, but normally if you look at the carb count, you probably go, well, I can't eat that because this is not ketogenic enough. So I've been eating this on a very regular basis, almost daily basis for the last, I say 2-3 months. So in the beginning, I kind of go, well, it's kind of like a cheat. I eat a little. And when I go, well, my body seems to like it. I almost crave for these beans. And also they're really good as kind of energy food, sort of in between yoga classes or fitness classes. And I'll come home and eat like a small bowl of this with some cashew maybe. And instantly my body's full of energy. And to be honest, it's a really quick and easy meal. And I say meal because sometimes that's all I eat as a meal. And my body feels great. So, and I don't understand how it works, and my weight is very stable because what you want to focus on is the weight fluctuation and also your cravings. I think if you're taking too many carbs, if you start to crave for things you shouldn't be craving, like carby things or sugary things. So far, the craving is very, very stable. I don't want to eat pasta or something like that. It doesn't send me off this crazy sugar high and low. So for whatever reasons, the fava beans work for me. work for my body, and I happened to discover it. So this is the point I'm making, is that there are sort of keto manual you can follow and just watch every number, but your body doesn't always work like that. So the only way you can figure out the best food for your body is to spend some time and just track and monitor. If any food you eat, doesn't matter if it's high carb or low carb, if it sends you to sort of bad cravings for foods you shouldn't be eating, then you need to stop eating it. Then maybe you want to cut it back. So the biggest lesson I learned from being on keto in a year and a half now is to learn from my body, learn what works for me, and not just relying on the textbook. The same thing goes to the calories. It's not about how many calories the food has, is how well your body can metabolize that particular food. So I have no idea what my keto level is, or if I'm in ketosis at all. All I know is it's working for me, and I'm feeling really strong. I don't have weird cravings. You can put a plate of pasta in front of me, I don't want to eat it. So I know it's working. If it's working, I'm gonna keep doing it. So it's kind of a long-winded answer with the macro and calorie question. The key message for me is not to just simply follow the textbook blindly, or just follow what someone else is doing. It might not work for you. Trust your body. You simply need to invest some time to monitor it. So another question that's asked quite often is, Fan, do you eat fruits on keto? And the answer is definitely yes. So for those of you who've been following me on Instagram, and you probably have some idea of what I eat on a regular basis. Very, very simple food most of the times, a lot of green vegetables. And also I eat fruits. So this is one of the pictures I posted on my Instagram. And follow my Instagram if you haven't already. So occasionally I have a bowl of fruits like this. So I'll get comments that looks really carby. It probably is. So again, this is totally anecdotal and personal. So with fruits, it's about how much and also how frequent you eat it. So I might have a bowl like this. I have some blackberries, some nutrins. I love nutrins. And there's some kiwi fruit on there. Very often I would have tangerines, like little satsumas. I have 2 or 3 of them. So there are great benefits of eating fruits that outweighs anything else. But it's about the choices you make, the type of fruits you choose to consume. So I tend to avoid high sugar fruits like apple or bananas. I occasionally have them, I have to say, not very frequently. The fruits I tend to crave for are citrus fruits like satsuma and oranges. And the summer has just gone, but I have a fair bit of mango and watermelon. So it's about the balance. I think the really important thing about being on keto is that you want to do it in a way that you can stay on it indefinitely. So anything you force yourself, you kind of push yourself into, very likely you're going to give up. And that's what I keep in mind. Obviously, being on keto, you do need to keep the carb low. That's just what it is. But just like macros and calories, they're not absolute. Find food and fruits that work for you. But as an overall rule, berries are pretty safe to eat. So an occasional satsuma wouldn't hurt. They're wonderfully fresh and delicious, and they lift your mood. If I feel a little bit fatigued or tired, I'll have a couple of satsumas, and instantly I feel really happy, and it doesn't seem to get in the way of my diet. So like fruit bowl like this, I would probably have it once or twice a month. I don't particularly limit myself to them, but that's how often I want them. So I follow my cravings and follow my instinct. So that's a fruit for you. The only thing I would not do with fruits is to turn them into fruit juice or smoothie. And I say that's a no-no. My feeling toward juicing has turned 180 degrees since I went on keto. Learning from all the experts, I know that that's probably the worst way you can consume vegetables or fruits. So with fruits in particular, you might go, well, it's got sugar in it. But if you look at natural fruits in nature, so anything contains sugar also contains fiber along with it. And that's nature's design. So the fiber slows down the release of sugar, and that prevents us going into this sugar high and sugar crash. That's why refined sugar is so terrible because you don't have the fiber as a barrier. So as long as you don't juice your fruits or vegetables, occasional fruits here and there, I really can't see there's any problem. Again, you want to do it in a way that you're going to be on this diet forever. I call it a diet, but you really want to do it in a way that this is just the way you eat. And I think it's easier idea to convey with if you're vegan or vegetarian, because you've already learned that kind of discipline in terms of making choices with what you eat. You already know how to do that. So it's just making a slightly different choice. Being vegan and vegetarian, for most of us, is a permanent thing. So it's the same way you want to approach keto. Don't think about it as something that you want to do for a couple of months and then go back to the way you eat. It doesn't matter as a result. You might go off keto. I don't know if it doesn't work for you. But if you approach in a way that is just the way you eat, then it will take away the stress. And also you're more in tune in terms of what works for your body. Okay, another question is, should you have cheat days, or do I have cheat days? Personally, I don't. The option was kind of there for me psychologically when I first went on keto. And I think it was helpful in the sense that I didn't feel trapped. I felt like if I wanted a bowl of pasta or some rice, I could do it. So it kind of made me more relaxed. But as a result, I never needed it. So I talked a little bit in the past on the fat adaptation. So once you've gone through that process and be fully fat adapted, your body literally just doesn't crave for anything carby anymore because it doesn't need it. If your body no longer uses glucose as fuel, why would it crave for something it doesn't need? So if you imagine yourself as a car, it's akin to if you were an electric car, it makes no sense to give it petrol. You need electricity. I really honestly have not craved for carbohydrate. Not really. Well, maybe in the first 2-3 months, there are a couple of occasions that I actually had some complex carbs like lentils, and I think I had rice on one occasion, but it just didn't feel right for my body, even though I crave for it. But I think it's more of a mental conditioning thing. I felt like I needed it. Maybe it would be nice to use some carbs, but your body is kind of go, it doesn't feel great. So I haven't had, anything that's like along that line since. I don't really think about it anymore. If you can condition your body to get to this stage, it's actually quite effortless. There might still be some mental conditioning because we're so deeply hypnotized to eat carby things. Any sort of happy occasions or social occasion you can think about pretty much involve something carby. So we associate eating a big plate of pasta as being comforting, or if there's birthday parties, you have big cakes. And if you want to indulge yourself, you eat something that's, you have crisps, you have cakes, that kind of stuff. So there's a certain mental conditioning you need to relieve yourself from. And that might take some time to kind of rewind your head to say, well, to see what it really is. I mean, now I see a plate of pasta, or if I walk past the bread aisle in a supermarket, all I see is starch. Because you really see what they really are. Those white bread, baguettes and bagels, etc. They all boil down to just a lump of starch that you put in your body. Again, I go back to being a vegan. It's a bit like if I walk past the meat aisle in the supermarket, I'm fully aware I'm looking at body parts. It's like that. If you're able to see what things really are, you no longer have that illusion, buying into all the stories attached to these things and the mental conditioning. And they're so prevalent in our culture. So the answer is no, I don't have cheat days, but it doesn't mean that wouldn't be useful for you. For some people, as I said, particularly in the early stage of going on keto, for most of people, it is a big step because we have to step away from all the carbohydrate food that's so ingrained in our food culture, to have that mental freedom and go, well, if I fancy a plate of pasta, I'm not breaking anything. I can have that and then come back. I think it might not be a bad thing to have that as an option in the back of your head. Whether you exercise it or not is up to you. I think the important thing is what works for others might not work for you. So I never say copy what I do because it might not work for you. It's about sharing the knowledge so you can use that as a reference and see what works for you. And once you're fat adopted, I say most likely you won't need that as an option. Another keto question I get quite often is the sweeteners. So when the recipe requires sweeteners, I tend to use stevia. So if you've been watching my video, you probably see me using this particular sweetener quite a lot. So this is the product I tend to use. And then someone commented on one of the videos and go, well, the stevia that you've been using is actually not stevia. And I looked into the ingredients and lo and behold, the person's right. It's erythritol, if I pronounce it right, erythritol. It's a kind of sweetener as well. So thank you for that comment. I didn't realize that because for some reason I was looking for stevia and I found this brand and it's kind of working quite well for me. You know, I have no problem with it, so I keep using it and didn't really look into the ingredients properly. Apparently some people have maybe tummy problem with erythritol, but if you're like me, I don't have problem with it. I'll continue to use it, but otherwise look for stevia. But at the same time, I looked up for stevia, like real stevia. This is the brand I like quite a lot. So it's Truvia. But this is in the UK, so I don't know if it's a British brand or you can get it wherever you want. So Truvia, it tastes quite nice. Also, I found this brand called Sweet Leaf as well via Amazon. The problem with this is it's probably because it's imported from the States. I'm not too sure. It's quite expensive. This is like almost £10. Whereas with Truvia, what I can get locally from my supermarket, it's quite reasonably priced. When it comes to keto sweetener, there are a lot of debates and no one knows the real answer. But as far as the insulin response goes, there are videos out there you can look up on YouTube that people do experiment and watch their insulin level and glucose level while consuming different sweeteners. And the general consensus seems to point to stevia. Stevia seems to be one of the sort of safest options. As far as ketogenic goes, it doesn't mean it's necessarily safe in terms of long-term effect. We don't really know. But as far as the being ketogenic goes, stevia seems to stimulate minimum insulin responses, which is kind of in line with the principle. And also I get comments on monk fruits extract or something along that line. Unfortunately, I'm not able to find any in the UK or Amazon over here, so I haven't tried it. So I can't comment on that. But apparently there are really positive things said about monk fruit sweetener. So if you've been using monk fruit sweetener, please share, and I'd really be interested in knowing about it. So I'm not necessarily saying that just use stevia, you'll be okay. I'm saying that that's what I use, what I feel safe using, and I have no problem with it. So that's the sweetener. And also I get a lot of questions over soy products. So this is one of the things that it's kind of quite polarized in terms of what people see, what soy product does and whether they should consume anything with soybeans. So I grew up in Taiwan and Tokyo as well. So in terms of my, sort of normal diet, regular diet, I ate a lot of tofu. I still do. As far as I'm concerned, soybeans are safe to eat because I grew up with them. And also it's a really important part of food culture in Far East Asia. Personally, my body's doing fine with it. I eat tofu on a regular basis. So on my recipes, I use tofu on a regular basis and also soy flour. So occasionally I get really concerned messages and go, well, should you be consuming a soy product? And I know there are a lot of debates out there in terms of pros and cons of eating soy products. In terms of the kind of concerns over soy products, you can probably look up the internet. But to be honest, I think a lot of that is probably a lot of speculations. There's no real proof in terms of how soy product is going to bring a sort of negative effect on our body in the long term. But having said that, there is soy products and there's soy products. But when it comes to choosing tofu, you do really need to be careful about it. So some of you probably have seen my how to make tofu video. So you can make tofu yourself very easily with some soybeans, or if not, you can buy tofu from the shop. When it comes to buying tofu, definitely check the ingredients. So tofu really only contains 3 ingredients: soybeans, water, and nigari most of the time. So nigari is a kind of mineral extracted from seawater. It's traditionally used to curdle soy milk and turn into tofu, to turn into bean curd. So when you buy tofu, check ingredients. If there's anything more than these 3 ingredients, pull it back. Don't buy it. That's my advice. Most natural tofu should not contain any more than 3 ingredients, period. Even if you go to like health food stores, you will see dizzy arrays of all sorts of tofu, like flavored, and you want to have your eyes open. That's the only way to eat tofu safely. Try to stay away from anything other than plain tofu. That's my advice. Occasionally I buy sort of smoked tofu, but I'll make sure that there's no, extra ingredients added to it. Particularly those marinated tofus and flavored tofus, very often they're just full of coloring and artificial flavors. It's just not worth putting in your body. Doesn't matter you're on keto or not. Just stay away from them. They're hard to digest and it's full of things you don't want to put in your body. So that's really simple rule. Just check the ingredients. If there's more than water, soybeans, and nigari, the setting agent, pull it back. And that's what I do, and haven't got any problems with tofu. So soy flour is the same, pretty low carb. A lot of people think that because it's got beans attached to the label, it must be carby. It happens to be very, very low carb. It's the same thing that makes tofu. So soy flour I use from time to time for my recipe. So that's the answer to your soybean product question. And also a lot of people have been asking for the printable version of my recipes and asking whether there's going to be a book or whether there's somewhere, a website they can go to so you don't have to go to the videos every time. The answer is unfortunately not till the moment. I don't have a book. There were some plans to build a website. And when I say plan to build a website, I don't mean that I have a team that's doing it for me. That'll be me doing it. So that project has been kickstarted in the summer, but I just run out of time to do it. I only have 24 hours a day, but hopefully it's going to go live at some point and it will make your life easier. It's just another way you can get to the recipes, you can search for them, etc. I think it will help you a lot. So I'll keep that in mind. But for now, there's no book or website you could go to. And by the way, if you don't know already, I always put the recipes and the directions underneath in the description area, which is under the title of the video. So you can cut and paste that somewhere else if that's easy for you. Life is really busy at the moment, so making the videos for you will be my priority. And if I have some time to spare, I'll work on a website or some other form that you could have this depository of recipes you can search and look up. So these are the sort of keto related questions I've been getting. And now I want to kind of talk a little bit on what's been happening to me recently, just give you an update. So if you're here for the keto stuff, you can sort of, elegantly drop out now. It's totally understandable, even though I hope you will stay, but only if you're interested. So some of you might know that I've been on yoga teacher training course. The last update I gave you, I think I was just about to switch to a more intensive course. Instead of 1 year, I was hoping to complete the course and be qualified in 4 months. And luckily, I got a spot on the 4 months course. So we're kind of deep into that course right now. And that's why I haven't been able to make a lot of videos recently, because it's pretty demanding course and there's a juggling with whatever else I've got during the week. So life has been very, very busy. It's an art form and trying to find time to get things done. But I'm firmly on this channel and I've got recipes in the pipeline I'm hoping to make to share with you. But it's about balancing life, so I have to sort of pick and choose on how I use my time. And the priority at the moment is to do the training. Hopefully, not too far down in the future, I'll be able to share sort of yoga videos with you as well. So if you've been following my Instagram, you probably see some yoga things that I've been doing in the classes. So the course has been pretty challenging in terms of the capacity you need to dedicate to it. And also the time as well. I do the trainings in a weekend, most weekends, Saturday and Sunday, 4 days. And also on top of that, there will be sort of homework, so kind of a coursework, the reports you have to write. And we've been doing observations, which means we go to yoga classes of our choice and then sit in and watch and then write up, kind of report and observation for that. So it's been pretty interesting. And also you get to talk to teachers you've been practicing with for a long time and get their support, let them know that you're on trainings. So it's kind of, to a certain extent, some networking as well. So you build up this network of people who know that you're on a training, maybe they'll need your service at some point. So on the sort of practical sense, it was quite beneficial. So I just want to share kind of a sort of incident that happened on my last training weekend. We've been sort of training nonstop every weekend for a month, and to be honest, I was feeling quite fatigued, and probably has something to do with that as well. I don't know. But at the end of the Sunday training, we were doing a class on chanting. So if you've been to yoga classes, you probably have teachers, some teachers, they would do maybe sing a little song or in Sanskrit. And most of the times you wouldn't know what the chanting is about, but you just kind of just go along with it. Or even simple Om is a kind of a form of chanting. When it comes to singing Sanskrit or chanting, I never really have a problem with that. Most of the times I just tag along, even if I don't know what the words are about. But what happened on the last weekend training, it kind of made me realize that I was chanting along with it because I felt I had to, if that makes any sense. A lot of times, particularly in the class, it's kind of by default, you just do what the teachers say, most of the time. And particularly on teacher training, you're trying to learn so much and try to absorb everything. The course is pretty good in the way that they try to expose you to all sorts of things like Ayurveda, yoga nidra, or meditation and that kind of stuff. But you can pick and choose what works for you. And on Sunday evening, we were doing the chanting class. So somewhere along the line, I had a realization that most of the times when I'm chanting, I'm not doing it like heartily. Yoga makes a lot of sense to me. The asana yoga, the physical yoga makes a lot of sense to me. That's kind of my way into yoga, so to speak. I know, yoga is not just what you do on a mat, it's a lot more. But for me, my entry to yoga is doing asana classes, is doing the physical classes. And that leads me into something else. So somewhere along the line, I realized the chanting and singing, they don't really work for me. I do it almost out of politeness because I want to be part of a class. I kind of tag along. So when we did the chanting class, obviously, it was like nearly 2-hour long class. And because these mantras, these words, first of all, most of us don't know the meaning of them. And also, I believe words have power, words have deeds. So I don't want to just chant anything just for the sake of it. So I chose not to chant. I basically stay silent, almost half meditative state, and throughout the class, the nearly 2-hour long class. And that was fine. And everything was fine. And it was fine until the end. The teacher basically asked everybody to stand up. And some of them were given kind of instruments. So if you see the Hare Krishna on the street, kind of a bit like that, you can just like dance along and then sing, chant. At that point, I wasn't given the choice of not to do it. When we were standing up, I kind of, have this battle in my mind. I said, well, do I want to join in? And I knew the answer. I didn't want to. It's not really in line with my practice, and I don't want to do it just for the sake of it. But I wasn't given a choice not to. It kind of started quite gentle, and the teachers kind of go, sing along, just dance around, give it a go, and I just stood there. That was my choice. I stood there. But obviously in the class setting, when everybody's kind of singing along, I stuck out like a sore thumb. I was standing there, and it wasn't just chanting, it was like dancing as well. And it got francier and francier, it got faster. It reminds me, if you watch those evangelical kind of TV program, people kind of go into trance, they start speaking tongue or fall over. It kind of reminded me a little bit like that. At that moment in time, I was quite troubled. But at the same time, I'm fully aware I was the only person in the class that wasn't tagging along. So in the beginning, I looked around because I thought, well, I had to be really conscious at this moment. And I looked around to see how people reacted to that. I didn't want to just have my head down and hope the moment would be over. So I looked around to see everybody's reaction. In the beginning, there were a few very uncomfortable faces. You just know they felt exactly the same way that I did. They didn't want to do it. They think this is ridiculous. But one by one, they caved in. They joined in and started doing the silly dance. I call it silly dance because I'm biased. I think it was, in a way, my interpretation of it is that kind of ritualistic dancing and chanting is highly religious. And to do it not being religious is almost an insult. That was I think that's what troubled me. And also being put into the situation that I had to choose whether to go along with it, do something I don't want to do, versus being an odd one out. Because my classmates, they were so concerned. They came to me and say, "Fan, are you okay?" There were, a couple of girls that came to me in the process and go, "Fan, come on, join in, join in." It was almost frantic. It was weird, and I was so troubled by it. I actually left the training day feeling quite upset. And I came home, I continued to be upset. And I had to examine myself and ask myself why I was so upset by, something that seemed kind of seemingly harmless. But then I thought, was it though? What's problematic in many folds is that people who pursue the path of yoga, I think not many people see that as just as a career. I think there are probably better choices that can make you more money. There's not much money in yoga, for sure. So people are not in there for profit. It's not as if you try to pursue to become an accountant or something like that. I think people do it in a way they're looking for something. So when you go into a group like that, like a training course, being accepted is kind of pretty important. But then you kind of question, is everything I do and accept on this course authentically me? Or am I doing it just because I don't want to offend others? And also I don't want to be rejected by others. I think that was what was troubling me. I kind of go, well, how far do you have to go to be accepted? What do I have to do so you're not going to be an outcast? I kind of had to question myself as well, how many things I do in the process of pursuing yoga, I do it purely because it's something to do, rather than something that I genuinely feel that is coming from me. Is when do you say no? And say, that's just not me, I'm not going to do it. Or is that being seen as a bad sport? So I think with yoga, part of yoga is finding what is authentically you. Particularly being a teacher, it's your responsibility to bring what is genuinely you rather than something that looks like what yogi should be doing. And I'll be totally honest with you, I don't know where I'm going with this, but I feel like I want to share it with you because a lot of times we kind of just subconsciously do things without questioning. And somewhere along the line, we're no longer ourselves and we don't even know why. And I had to ask myself, why I wanted to yoga, why I even want to pursue down this path. I realized that I'm going to yoga to look for clarity, to regain that sanity. I'm not pursuing yoga in order to go into another belief system or religion. I'm not there to look for gurus. So yoga is what brought me out of the kind of mental chaos that's been plaguing me in the past few years through losing my parents and a few other events. It kind of helped me regain clarity within me and seeing things as they are. So anything that's going to take me out of it and forcing me into this cookie cutter of what yoga teacher is, I will need to find courage to resist them. And that's what that weekend, that Sunday evening, made me realize. One of the reasons that upset me of that incident was it made me realize why we hear about stories of practitioners, yoga practitioners. They put up with sexual harassments or advances. We hear about the Bikram guy and we hear about the Ashtanga guy. That kind of stories. You can kind of see how that could happen. I think people going to yoga a lot of times to look for acceptance and support. When you're in that kind of mode, you're more susceptible to that kind of abuse. I think that chanting class made me realize very consciously what I need to do from this point on, not just as a yoga teacher, but as a human being, is to clearly to be able to say no. And it's not yoga specific. That kind of pressure can happen in workplace, in social situations, in relationship. So thank you for listening to my rambling. I felt it was important to share with you. Many of you have been so supportive with my pursuit of yoga and my channel in general. I'm so grateful. And I'll continue for sure to share my recipes. And, it really brightens my day to get comments from you and saying that how you enjoy the recipes and how you like the videos. And the food should bring you health, it should bring you pleasure, it should bring you fuel to do what you want to do. So thank you so much for spending time with me today, and follow my Instagram. And I promise there will be more recipes to follow. So thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.